My son asked why we kept feeding him every day, and I understood he'd only eaten when he earned it. Caleb had been living with me for 3 weeks when he asked a question that stopped my heart. I was making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, the same thing I made most mornings because it was simple, and he seemed to tolerate it. He sat at the kitchen table in the clothes I'd bought him the week before, jeans that actually fit, and a blue shirt he'd picked out himself. He watched me plate the eggs with an expression I'd started to recognize, cautious observation mixed with confusion. When I set the plate in front of him, he didn't touch it. He looked at the food, then at me, then back at the food. Finally, he said, "Why do you keep giving me food every day?" I thought he was asking about variety. Maybe he was tired of eggs. I said, "Do you want something different? I can make pancakes or cereal if you prefer." He shook his head quickly and said, "No, I mean, why do I get food every single day? What did I do to earn it?" The question hung in the air between us while I tried to process what he was actually asking. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. I said, "You don't have to earn food, Caleb. You get fed because you're a kid and kids need to eat. That's how it works." He stared at me with those dark eyes that had seen too much for an 8-year-old. He said, "But I didn't do my points yesterday. I only got 6 out of 10, and the day before I got 7. You're still feeding me anyway." Points. He was talking about some kind of point system. I kept my voice calm and asked, "What are points?" He looked confused that I was confused. He said, "The things you have to do to earn meals. Make your bed perfect, no wrinkles. Clean something without being told. Answer questions right. Say yes ma'am and no sir every time. Stand up straight. Don't cry or complain. Each thing is worth 1 point and you need 8 points to get dinner and 6 points to get breakfast." My hands were shaking, so I put them flat on the table. I said, "Caleb, there are no points here. You get breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, no matter what. You get food because you're my son and I love you, and feeding you isn't something you have to earn." He processed this information slowly, his face showing disbelief. He said, "What if I'm bad? What if I don't make my bed or I talk back or I forget to say sir?" I leaned forward and said, "Then you still get fed. Being fed isn't a reward. It's a basic thing that always happens. Do you understand?" He didn't answer, just looked at his plate of eggs that were getting cold. Finally, he picked up his fork and took a small bite, chewing slowly while watching me the entire time. I realized he was still waiting for me to take the food away, to tell him he hadn't earned it after all. I'd become Caleb's foster parent through a process that started 6 months earlier, after my wife Amanda died from cancer. We'd always planned to have kids, but the diagnosis came before we could start trying, and then there wasn't time for anything except treatments and hoping for miracles that didn't come. After she died, I was alone in our house with a guest room we'd intended to turn into a nursery. A friend suggested foster care, said Amanda would have wanted me to help a kid who needed it. I went to the orientation meeting not really committed, but the social worker described children in the system who desperately needed stable homes, and I thought about Amanda and signed up for the certification classes. The process took 4 months of training, home studies, background checks, and interviews. My caseworker was a woman named Rita Fernandez, efficient and direct, who told me most foster parents wanted babies or toddlers. The older kids, especially those with behavioral issues or trauma histories, were harder to place. When Rita called about Caleb, she was honest about his file. He was 8 years old, had been in foster care since age 5, when his biological parents' rights were terminated due to severe neglect and substance abuse. He'd been in 4 foster homes since then, each placement disrupting for different reasons. Rita said he had trouble following rules, hoarded food, didn't sleep well, and struggled in school. She also said something in her voice that I couldn't identify at the time, a careful cautiousness when she described his last placement. She said he'd been with a foster family called the Prestons for 2 years, which was actually stable by foster care standards, but the placement ended when another foster child in the home made allegations of abuse. The investigation was ongoing, but Caleb and 3 other children had been removed as a precaution. She asked if I was willing to take an 8-year-old boy with complex needs, and I thought about Amanda and said yes. The first time I met Caleb was at Rita's office on a Friday afternoon in late September. He was small for 8, thin and wiry with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that tracked every movement in the room. He wore clothes that were clean but ill-fitting, and he sat perfectly still in the chair next to Rita's desk with his hands folded in his lap. Rita introduced us and I said hello, trying to sound friendly but not overwhelming. Caleb said, "Hello sir," in a flat, automatic voice. I told him he could call me Thomas. That sir felt too formal, but he just nodded without confirming he'd actually do it. Rita explained I was going to be his foster dad and he'd be coming to live at my house. She asked if he had any questions. He said, "No ma'am," in that same flat voice. We talked for a few more minutes, Rita going over logistics, and the whole time Caleb sat motionless except for his eyes which kept darting to the door. And that's when things took a turn I never expected. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.